Okay, we're live, Facebook Live with Rebekah today. So, welcome, Rebekah. Let me just change my screen so I can see you and the Facebook chat at the same time because I totally ignored the chat last time. So I didn't know people were commenting on it. So I am trying to multitask and look at the chat and talk to Rebekah at the same time, in which I'm not used to multitasking, but I will give it a shot. All right, so welcome, Rebekah, and I really wanted to interview Rebekah for a while, so this is my dream come true. And we've been in the Finders community together I joined 2016, so maybe 5 years or so. But anyway, and we've talked in a group, but I never talked to Rebekah on a one-on-one basis. So I am so excited to talk to Rebekah today. And Rebekah is her claim to fame is you were in the first Finders course, so which was 2014, correct? Something like that. And then, so this is experimental course, Finders course by Jeffrey Martin, too, using 26 scientifically proven methods to awaken people. And you were in the first sort of experimental group, and Jeffrey didn't know if it's going to work or not. And then you can tell me more about it. But Rebekah was the first person had that shift of consciousness. So in his word, transitioned to fundamental well-being. So that's why, she got a lot of attention, and also all the finders followed Finders course, after Rebekah's group. Now, I don't know how many groups there are now since, I'm facilitating Japanese course. I think it's a Finders course 26 or something like that. So it's been a while, and a lot of them, heard of Rebekah, like, oh, she's the first person who awakened or had the consciousness shift. So especially, the older finders, you are like an icon, like, oh, because of you, like, oh, I want what she had. She had that kind of experience. So I want to hear all about her journey and what the shift was like in person, because I watched the video, but I haven't really heard about that experience in person. So I'm really looking forward to it. So welcome, Rebekah.
Well, thanks for having me. It's great to be here, and I'm looking forward to a one-on-one conversation with you too, and other people who are showing up or not, or listening to it on a recording. The first Finders course was like just so experimental. I mean, I don't think I'll just speak for myself, but I didn't even know what awakening was. I just thought it was like enlightenment, but that is such a loaded word that I wasn't even expecting to get enlightened. But I didn't really know what PNSE was. That was just kind of a foreign term. So we didn't really know what to expect. And so when it actually happened, we had just gotten that manuscript. It is now the Finders book, but this was like many, many iterations ago, 7 years ago, still in manuscript form. So we had just gotten that kind of synchronistically when I call it a shift of consciousness. And so, I read the description. It's like, wow, I think that's what's happening. So I kind of I didn't really tell anybody in the group, and I kind of didn't even tell Jeffrey until about a week later. I said, well, I'm just going to sit with this and see what's happening. But it was a definite shift, a definite change of being. And so Jeffrey and I had a little interview on Google Hangouts, that ancient technology. And he goes, yeah. He said, I had no idea. He was surprised that someone had shifted. He thought it was going to be a long-term experiment where he was following up with people years later who were going to tell him, yeah, I found this one method that really, put me over the edge. And so he was really as surprised as I was. And so, that was kind of fun. And then, I told the group, and they were, very happy for me. And I really, like, looking back in retrospect, I think the shift here sort of it's like the domino, like one domino went down and it just sort of opened up everybody to, yeah, this is possible. Yeah, if she can do it, I can. And so I'm, maybe that's my ego thinking that, but I really think it just kind of opened up the possibility of, yeah, it can happen. And this protocol is very, very worth doing and practicing. So that was kind of the initial deal. Any questions on that?
I really want to hear that. Yeah, I really want to hear the shift itself. But before that, maybe briefly, just for the people who might be may not know about Finder's course or not familiar with your story. So just maybe backtrack and then how you got into this course. So maybe a background, like you had any meditation experience, or you had you mentioned you didn't know what awakening was or enlightenment was, but you mentioned a little bit, but maybe you studied something or read something, or what led you to taking the course?
Okay. Well, actually, I never considered myself a seeker. I was always kind of an explorer, and my whole deal was spiritual evolution. That's what I called it. What can I do in this life to reach as far as I can to evolve my spirit, my soul, so that I don't have to come back. That was my original goal. How far can my spirit evolve, in this lifetime? And so I started out in high school. I mean, this is like 50 years ago, reading Edgar Cayce and, things like that. I was really into Edgar Cayce and just spiritual kind of books. And in my 20s, and I also kind of did some like psilocybin and, kind of mind altering things in high school that sort of sent me out into the cosmos. So that was fun, but I, wasn't like a heavy drug user, but, just kind of recreational. It was the 70s. And so that kind of expanded my universe, expanded my mind, as Timothy Leary would say. And so then in my mid-20s, I discovered this book called the Urantia book. And it's Urantia, Urantia book. And it was this unbelievable cosmic communication. It was like automatic writing that this group, this philosophical group, was channeling from the angels. And it described the hierarchy of the angels and what your spirit and your soul goes through. So for about, I think, 3 years, that's all I read. I was just immersed in this book. And that took me to a really high level of knowledge. And so then it just kind of continued on. I'm from Texas, so I did a lot of traveling in the Southwest, the Indian, the Native American culture. And, that is just very spiritual in itself. And the nature of just being in nature and sort of nature as your temple, as your cathedral, that kind of thing. So I was just always immersed in nature and the naturalness of living, that kind of thing. So, and then just reading, read a lot of books on different philosophies and religions and how they all intersect and how there are many paths up the mountain, and the creator, the higher power, really doesn't care how you get there. So, that kind of study.
Mhm.
So that's about it. Then the finder's course happened.
Okay, so exactly how did that happen? So is that from one of the books that led you
Well,
to, yeah.
Just serendipitously, I was, cruising on Amazon, they recommended books, like here's a book you might like. And The Fourth Awakening showed up by Rod Pennington and Jeffrey Martin. So I read that. And there were, I think there was just The Fourth Awakening out at that time. This was maybe about 4 or 5 years before, I don't know how many years, some years before the Finder's Course. And so I weirdly, I have no idea why, reached out and sent an email to Rod Pennington saying, wow, loved your book, like big fan, and I've never done that before in my life. I've never contacted an author whose book I've read. And Rod is such an accessible guy and generous. And he wrote me back. We got a dialogue going, and we just got to be kind of online friends. And I started proofreading many of his books. And, we would discuss the premise and the concepts about it. And so I was a friend, online friend with him. And he posted, I think, on Facebook, that Jeffrey was thinking about doing a course protocol based on the premises of The Fourth Awakening. And so I wrote Ron and said, hey, can you get me in? And which he didn't. He said, look, I'm opening said, write Jeffrey a letter. And I wrote Jeffrey a letter, just kind of about my history and what I basically just told you. And Jeffrey wrote back and said, wow, I'd like you, to be in the course. So I wrote Rod and said, wow, did you, put in a good word for me? And he said, no, ma'am, I did not. I just opened it up on Facebook. So, I thought I had an in, but I didn't. I just got in on my own and, through my letter. So that's kind of how I got in. Man, I thought I had just won the lottery, to be just one. I mean, there were, I think, hundreds of people who applied for it, and to be one of 6, I just felt so blessed and fortunate, and was very grateful for the opportunity. And all 6 of us were just very dedicated students, and we really, adhered to the practices, and were diligent in our taking of the course. So that's kind of how I got in. I wrote a letter.
That's great. I've heard that kind of really very, very short version of that story, but never got into the details. And I had no idea hundreds of people applied for the first one. I just, he mentioned that, some people who responded to the Fourth Awakening book, but I didn't know you have to apply and sort of, you have to pass the exam, so to speak. And then you got handpicked by Jeffrey. So I had no idea. Yeah, cool. Okay.
Yeah, I was going to say something now. I forgot what it was. Oh, well, I forgot. It might come back.
Yeah. Okay. So let's go back to your experience. So this is about 3 weeks or 4 weeks into the program, kind of early on, right?
Yeah, it was probably right before the first break, the practice intensive. Oh, and so I kind of went to bed one night, and I had, you're supposed to do a meditation before bed. So I kind of got real out into the cosmos, and, I was having all these realizations and insights, and the universe was speaking. And, I thought, you know what? I might just wake up awakened tomorrow, because by then I knew what awakened was. So I'm just going to wake up awake. And I woke up the next morning and it was just a definite shift. I mean, colors were brighter, the clarity, I took my morning walk with the dog, and like I was just in awe of the trees and the sky. And I mean, there was just this clarity that I had never had before in this change of perspective. And yeah, I mean, you know, when I was doing early interviews after that first Finders course, I kept using the term, like I felt like I was kind of bonkers. And Jeffrey's going, no, let's not use that word. But it kind of felt like, you know, and I'm sure like a lot of people have had this experience, and it's fabulous that we can talk about it. And that if people do feel a little bonkers, they have so many community members to talk to about it and go, hey, it's cool. It's normal. It's normal to feel bonkers. And, you know, and I'm just a huge proponent of the perfectly okay community. It is just wonderful, because the first couple of years, until they started having more Finders courses, there weren't that many of us. And we were just kind of like thrown out into the wind, like, okay, here you go. There was no integration process or deconditioning, or, you know, we were just kind of thrown out into the world. But one thing that really did help me was immediately after Finders Course 1, I mentored a group in Finders Course 2. Mm-hmm. And so basically I went through the whole Finders Course just right after I finished the first one. Mm-hmm. I mean, albeit it was, you know, from a different perspective. But you know how and I hope I'm not putting too much emphasis on the Finders Course, but this is my experience. But when you take the course, it's fast and furious. You know, the practices and the methods go so fast. You do them a week and then you go on to something else. So I felt like I kind of like missed out a lot, you know, or I missed things that were being taught. So going through that a second time with a new group really settled me into the on the continuum, and it deepened it, and it focused it. And then I mentored a couple of other ones too, and I would go through it all over again. And so really it just cemented and immersed. I was fully immersed in the Finders Course protocol for the first 3 years. Mm-hmm. So that helped a lot.
Yeah. So for example, what kind of practices that have worked for you? Certain meditation or certain exercises, the positive psychology exercises, or do you remember anything like either one thing or a couple of things that really worked for you?
Well, I really liked the early iteration or the early teachings of the group awareness exercise. It's different now. But I loved doing that, and the unprovoked happiness. That was my, you know, free ticket. You know, that I mean, I live in pure conscious experience now, and as Gary Falk and I kind of recognized, it really is ordinary conscious experience. It's just ordinary. You know, you can see the beauty in everything, in a lampshade, in a leaf, you know, that kind of thing. So that I loved. I loved the Ascension with Dr. Bob. That was great. And, you know, it's been so long ago, I religiously did the morning and evening exercises. I religiously did those for the first 2 years, and the hour of meditation a day.
Oh, and just
yeah, so that really just kind of kept me in this presence conscious presence.
Okay, great. I'm paying attention to the chat, and then Gary said, yeah, he just said, see, I'm so proud of myself. I'm watching the chat finder, Facebook, not finders, no Facebook chat, and then talking to you at the same time. And Gary just chimed in, OCE, ordinary consciousness experience. Rainbows are okay too.
Yeah.
Yeah, he says, well,
Hi,
looks
Gary.
good. Yeah, and Gary is watching us. All right, good. Okay, so maybe we can kind of move forward. But it's actually before that, I just wanted to mention that because I was fortunate enough right after Finders Course 9, I already had the POK kind of pretty much ready to go. And then they're still at infant stage, but there are a bunch of people out there and kind of took us under their wings and they, oh, here are groups and you can go to this group and that group. So they really helped us. So I cannot imagine after the Finders course, and especially you have a transition, and after that, you're kind of thrown out to the world. Okay, go back to the society and just do whatever.
Yeah.
So I can imagine that's unsettling. Yeah.
Well, our group kept in touch for a little while, but that eventually phased out.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So maybe you can tell us a little bit more about from that time. So you continue to exercise for 2-3 years. You mentored some people, but then probably you evolved even more from PCE or some exercise up until now, because there are a lot of other things going on with the Finders course and other things. And I'm sure you have evolved. And Jeffrey also says there's like a 7-year cycle. I think he has 2-year cycle and then a 7-year cycle. And then I don't know if you had any experience like after so many years, something shifted again. And then especially you're coming up to 7-year, so maybe something else is shifting. So tell us about that.
Well, gosh, I couldn't tell you when each of I've had several, many more shifts, but I couldn't tell you when they happened. Like 2 years in, 3 years in, who knows? But but I would kind of just put attention, like something would come up, and I would put intention on it. Like I know at first I really put attention to the inner energy field, the body, and it's a lot of what Eckhart Tolle kind of teaches you. It just, and I'm not really good at describing things, but it's just the inner energy field. And so I would meditate on that and really concentrate on that. And it got to where I was just feeling it all the time. It's just a constant presence of this inner energy field. It's that tingling, that vibrational energy. And I got into vibrational energy kind of meditations and study reading about that. And, that kind of puts you into a different realm of experience. And for a while, I was kind of having a challenge, or I was trying to reconcile the inner and the outer. Like I was feeling like, well, my inner world is just all love and peace and joy. And, but I would get into the outer world, like life. And I would get annoyed at something and react to something. It's like I couldn't reconcile that. I was separating the inner and the outer until I finally just merged the two. And that was something that I didn't consciously do. It just kind of happened. But it was because I was putting attention on it, and the intention of reconciling, the separateness where there was no separateness, but it was in my mind that it was separate. And then just naturally, it evolved into realizing that there is no inner and outer. There's just both. There's inner and outer. There's no difference between the two. So, I remember that being a kind of a significant shift. And then, gosh, probably maybe 5 years into it, I was in Iceland, and a lot of my old vintage friends know this story well, but I was in Iceland and we were at this waterfall, and there were all these tourists, just like going around like selfie, and here I am at a waterfall and I'm running on, and I was just standing totally still. And, it wasn't, it was at the base of the waterfalls, feeling the spray, and there were rainbows, but I was just standing totally still. And it was like I was transparent, and all these people were just going like this. And it was just so still and wonderful and beautiful. And it's just like, wow. And when it was time for us to leave, I stood there for like 30 minutes, probably, at least 30 minutes. And, my husband was taking pictures. He's a photographer. So, he was doing that. And so when it was time to leave, I just turned around and walked away. And this feeling of, well, this is a living meditation. Mm-hmm. I can take this with me through life. And ever since then, almost everything I do, has a component of a meditative quality to it. It's like being in a pure conscious experience, just all the time. I can, even in the midst of, this last couple of months where my husband fractured a vertebra, and it's been really, really challenging, tough time for the last couple of months. Even then, in the midst of feeling overwhelmed and having to do everything, he couldn't do anything. And I still get a feeling of overwhelm, but that's kind of because I am overwhelmed and it's natural. It's just, but I could just sit for a moment in my sunroom and look out at the river and the trees, and, and just be at peace, even in the midst of all this. So even though it was a challenging time, and there were many, many times where he would trigger, a reaction of me, like complaining about something. It's like, well, like I'm doing everything, I can't do anything else. It would trigger that feeling of, well, what else can I do? But even in the midst of all that, awareness, that presence of consciousness, the presence of being was always there. Mm-hmm. Even though I could have strangled him a couple of times. But that was just what is. The feeling of wanting to strangle him is just what is at that moment.
What happened that came up, right? Yeah.
Well, it was kind of hard to do it with a neck brace.
Yeah, but you
couldn't get to it.
Yeah, right. Yeah, he's kind of protected. Maybe you should have done that. No, he's protected. He's not gonna, suffocate it. So maybe that would have superficial, trigger.
Yeah. So I still get triggered. I still react to things. I'm still a human being.
So maybe what I'm hearing is that you still get triggered. You're still human being. So there's something comes up, then you might react and you get overwhelmed. But it seems like you don't get triggered by the trigger. So it's there, that happens. But then you always have this peace presence that you can always go back to. And then the trigger might happen, I don't know, a few seconds, a few minutes, a few hours, whatever, depends on what's happening. But it sounds like your core is not shaken. If you have a such thing as core, but you don't get shaken by that. So you can always go back to this peace presence at the Iceland, at the waterfall. But that was, by the way, that was so beautiful.
It's all part of the integration process. I mean, sometimes, you sort of have to fake it till you make it. I mean, there were, well, especially times in this last experience with, you know, the accident. You know, I felt like I had to acknowledge, I mean, you know, that was hard for him to go through. I mean, it's hard enough being on this side, but, you know, I mean, he had all these fears and feelings, you know, of, I can't even explain it, but I'm mostly fears. You know, is this going to change my life forever? And so, you know, it's not like a teachable moment, you know. I had to be supportive and compassionate and empathetic, you know, a lot more than, you know, I kind of felt inside, which is, you know, I don't know if I'm explaining that right, but, you know, it was so hard to watch someone suffer like that and know that he doesn't have to suffer. You know, this is just what's happening. We're doing the best we can. We're seeing doctors. We're doing everything we can. So there's no reason to worry. But, you know, you can't say that to someone that is feeling that much fear and anxiety because, you know, he's the one in the neck brace. So, loving compassion had to rule the day.
Right. Yeah, for somebody who is experienced and the fear, helplessness, loss of function, unknown.
Yeah.
You know, he might lose the function. You know, it might be forever. You know, that would be a.
But I never worried about it. You know, I just was taking it as it is, and you know, being reassuring and, you know, confident that everything was going to work out. But, you know, sometimes somebody doesn't want to hear that. And so, you know, you have to listen and be supportive and be compassionate with their fears. So
I think that's one of the thing, being a finder, and you have a husband or spouse, friends or family who are suffering, and we are watching them like they don't have to suffer. But then, you know, sometimes you might say something, but other times it just, I don't know, you cannot convey that. You know that the other person would not accept it at that moment. So I think, so I think that's sometimes difficult and hard to see somebody suffer because of that. And we know like we can just take that suffering out, you know, just like that. But you just cannot say that or convey that to the other person. So we had similar either conversation or Facebook exchange or something, you know, about our spouses. You know, they're not really into kind of spiritual thing or woo-woo thing, or so but it's not spiritual or woo or anything. It's just that's a fact. Like, you know, there's nothing you can do. You're doing everything you can, and there's no reason to spend the time and energy worrying about it. It's the outcome will be the same. It is what it is. Again, you cannot say that, or you might say that, but, you know, a lot of time, you know, they don't hear it. So that's
but it's kind of funny. Sometimes, you know, he'll say something, and I was like, it's like right out of something I've said. I'm silently going, all right, you know, I'm getting through a little bit. So there are good moments like that.
All right, great. Okay, so so it's great to hear that, especially kind of getting through that, although as overwhelming as it is, but this fundamental well-being is kind of helping you getting through that. And so have you had any?
I also wanted to say that, you know, once the Explorers course came out, you know, I took that first one, and that was an introduction to deconditioning, integrating. And this was about maybe 3 years into it, 3 or 4 years into it. And it was really a great time. I kind of worked on my own for a while and gone through other finders courses. I not only mentored just individual students, but I facilitated 3 or 4 finder's courses. And then I wound up, Nora Yates and I wound up mentoring, facilitating the Explorers course too. So I went through that twice. So I've taken advantage of a lot of the tools in the toolbox and really understanding them. And I mean, right now I couldn't tell you what one of them is because my memory's so bad, but along the way it really helped. So anything like that that your students or your listeners can take, I highly recommend it.
Right.
And that's a question, like on your Facebook, your EM Consulting, I mean, who's listening to this? Maybe some Finders Course people, but do you have other people that you coach, that are interested in this?
That's a good question. Yeah, actually, I don't know because this page is fairly new. And before I made this page for Japanese finders, but then I invited all kinds of finders alumni, just to like the page. Now, please like my page so that I can get started. I have some people audience. But then I combined this one with the English page. I studied the English page because I wanted to do something similar in English speaking world. So I just combined these two. So right now, kind of organically expanding to people who might be interested in mindfulness or meditations and awakening. So it's kind of up to, I don't know, 300 people or something. But how
many are on here now?
Right now, I think there only was up to 6 people. But with the Gary's, I think all the views came afterwards. I don't know how many people are watching. I know at least 3 of you at the moment of the live, but then all the views, up to 600 views, that came
oh wow,
days and days and days afterwards. So it's been a week, I guess. So now it's up to 600 views. So I actually don't know where they're coming from. Where they're watching, is they find the scores on my page, or did I promote somewhere else? I can't remember.
Well, is Gary Falk on here now?
No, he was on the chat. I don't know if he's still there or not, but Gary, if you're there, just type in the chat that you're there. I'll see it, but I don't know. So we'll see. I think there's a little bit delay in the Facebook, so I don't see that right now, but hopefully he hasn't deserted us. Now, let's see. Yeah. Let's see. So yeah, you mentioned the Explorers course, and I remember I recently facilitated Explorers course for Japanese people, and a couple of things that set the time to remember, to kind of come back to fundamental well-being. So that's one of them, and also doing a trigger journal that has been helpful for me. So whenever you have a trigger, you just write it down, or at least think about it. I think his recommendation was writing it down and then really explore what it is. So those are the things, and I'm at the stage of really trying to deconditioning and identifying, and then see if I can reverse it and kind of make a new brain pathway to respond in a different ways. So do you have any examples, like these were the triggers, but now you have a totally different response, or that the example of reconditioning?
Boy, I can't recall. I remember the trigger journal was very helpful because you can see patterns of what's triggering you. And my main one, and I'm still kind of working on it, is that feeling of overwhelm, of like, I'm having to do everything. And sometimes, and Byron Katie, sometimes that's true. Sometimes it's just my perspective of the last 2 months. I really have been doing like everything, but sometimes it's just a perspective. Like I don't feel like I'm getting any help with the dog, or different things just with the household and things like that. But I have a feeling that I'm getting more help than I'm really realizing. So I'm still kind of working on that one. I haven't totally resolved that trigger. So, but the trigger journal helped me recognize that's what it is. And it could be, past lives, epigenetically engendered in here, that it's a really tough one for me to get rid of. So, I'm just kind of working on it, and just realizing that it's just a belief, it's just a perspective. I'm a big fan of looking at a situation and seeing if you can change your perspective on it. And it just a slight shift of a change in perspective can just iron out that wrinkle.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Kind of going back to the beginning, because you mentioned past life, Edgar Casey. So Edgar Casey, I remember reading it long time ago. So he was channeling, and something or some entity was speaking through him, right? He was not that educated, or he was not that spiritual person, but something was speaking through him. So do you have that kind of experience yourself, or encounter directly with somebody who might channel, or anything like that, that changing energy, or you get something download from something other than your little body?
Yeah, not that I recognize that it's another sentient being or anything, but I listen to my intuition and I tune into my knowing. I have a deep sense of knowing what the right direction or the right path is. And I listen to it just religiously. Sometimes someone else in the household wants to do something different. And meaning my husband, it's the only other person in the household.
Yeah.
And it doesn't work out so great, but my knowingness, kind of knew that it was not the right thing to do, but I can't insist on being right, and I know better all the time. So I just kind of have to sort of pick what I feel strongly about and let a lot of things go. So knowing and trusting that. And I don't know I don't know where that comes from, the source, the all-knowing universe. I don't know where that comes from, but it's just more a feeling of knowingness. It's not really a voice. I'm sure it comes through as thoughts, but I have no idea. I don't get a sense that it was it's an angel or anything. Okay. Or an alien being.
Do you feel like do you still make decisions yourself, or with the help of the source, or when you try to do something, when you make a decision, what does it feel like to you?
I kind of go back to that perspective. I sort of see things from a higher perspective, like a cosmic perspective. And I don't mean for that to sound like a superior, higher, like, what I mean? It's not like it's just more like a cosmic consciousness, because, the higher you get, the more you can see, just like with a satellite. You just have a broader, wider perspective of things. And that's kind of how I approach decisions, how to see it from a higher perspective, not down in the trenches. Sometimes there are trench decisions, but I just don't get I don't analyze where it comes from, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
I think there is a
Yeah, exactly.
higher source
Mhm.
that knows a lot more than Rebekah does. But
Right. And you cannot really pinpoint, where it is or what it is, because it's kind of permeating everything. So it's hard
yeah,
to pinpoint, and probably
yeah,
there's no we should name it. Yeah, it's
yeah,
just what is. Yeah.
yeah.
Uh, So, so you like to explore, and probably that hasn't changed, I assume. If you're not seeking, you've never been a seeker, but you like to explore. So, what do you think? About your husband's kind of better, get the brace off, color off. So maybe you can go back to exploring. So, what's your next chapter?
Oh, whoever knows that. Like
Like,
many in the community, I'm really enjoying the Mission Sutras by the Harish Christopher Wallace. I'm in a study group with Tancha and Gary and a lot of other people. They're doing a beautiful job with that, and sometimes I have time. Sometimes I don't have time to read ahead, so I just show up, and whatever they're reading, wherever we are in the book, I just like immerse myself in that and um, soak that in. I can't go every week, but when I can, I tune in and just absorb it. And I resonate so strongly with it. It's like this 1,000-year-old philosophy, and it's just as resonant today. And it mirrors my experience and this way of being so closely that you can just sink into it. So I'm really enjoying that. It's just an hour and a half of just peace and resonance, with this group of people and this reading and this writing. So I've really been enjoying that. And, I haven't been to too many meetups. I've had to postpone all the mentoring, the individual mentoring I'm doing, just because I just didn't have time. And I have a 1-year-old puppy who is taking up a lot of time. So between my husband and the puppy, I'm just moving all day long. And so it's wonderful when I can get to a meetup and just get the transmission, the energy. It just kind of fills me up and rejuvenates me. So, but other than that, that's really the only spiritual book I'm reading right now. I put those down for several years. I just wasn't interested in spiritual writings. The Perfect Brilliant Stillness by David Carse, I've read a couple of times since the shift. That resonated so strongly with me. And actually, the first year of PNSE, or Fundamental Wellbeing, I read Eckhart Tolle's book, The Power of Now, I think like 3 times. I was really just, it's like, God, I can understand this. And Rupert Spira, I did a couple of years, just a lot of his meditations, and so that's all kind of fallen off a little bit, but I still have a couple of prayers that I say almost every night, and just kind of finish the day.
Yeah, I can resonate with a lot of you mentioned different names that I heard. I can really resonate with that too. And things that's been written thousands of years ago, that really amazes me. And we're the same human beings, same consciousness. What they wrote, really resonate with us to this day. So that really amazes me.
Yeah. And just how natural this is. I mean, we walk around thinking that this shift of consciousness, or this awakening, this awareness is not available to everyone, but it is, and it's so ordinary, and it's just so simple. And you kind of realize that, well, you know, I've always been this way, but I just didn't recognize it. And
Right.
I love to read books that resonate with my experience of being now. And a lot of people can say it a lot better than I can. I don't communicate it very well, but I love reading it and resonating with it, going, yeah, this is what it is.
Yeah, I agree. I was talking to Gary this morning, and we were just talking about ordinary, consciousness, awareness, and really everyday people. And I was telling him what I want to do is spiritual kindergarten. Like this is not special. You don't have to go to graduate school for this one. Like
Exactly.
let's start teaching this. Make them aware or make them not forget what they have. They already got it. It's ordinary. So
Yeah, just remind people that it's already here.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Okay. Yeah, I've always admired your presence when I get to go to the meeting. And these days I cannot go to meeting too often, but whenever I see you in the group meetings, and then you have this presence that really you embody the peace, joy of life, blessed, and all of that. So, I just admire your presence. So, and
Thanks.
yeah, so I'm so, happy that we had a chance to visit. So, do you have some kind of last word that you want to share, like, or something you want to share, like maybe, but everybody, like maybe do this, or what about this? Maybe just kind of last
Well,
something you want to share.
I had a thing show up on Facebook the other day that I shared many years ago, and it reminded me of it. So I'd like to read that, because this was one of my AM, PM meditations for many years. So I'd like to just finish with that. May I?
Please. Yeah, excellent.
Okay, it's not long. Remember the clear light, the pure, clear white light, from which everything in the universe comes, to which everything in the universe returns, the original nature of your own mind, the natural state of the universe unmanifest. Let go into the clear light, trust it, merge with it. It is your own true nature. It is home. And that's from the Tibetan Book of the Dead, which is like ancient. So that to me just sums it up.
Yeah.
Your own true nature, it is home.
Right. Yeah. Not the exact words, but that's very similar to the morning meditation that I do. I just kind of imagine, visualize that the white light, and then that expands and expands, and one with everything, the universe. So thank you for doing that. Yeah. Okay, great. It was fun. Thank you so much.
It's been fun. Thank you all for attending. And
yeah,
I hope I said something halfway interesting.
Yeah, so we will see if we can go past the 600 views. We'll see. Okay, thank you so much, Rebekah.
Love to you, Eddie. Thank you for having me.